Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, agents. I'm Mic Cullen, and welcome to another Let's Talk here on The Division. Today, our main topic of discussion is actually not an article written by me or a discussion by me, but my discussion surrounding an article written on Medium.com yesterday by a Division player named Mic Cullen. This was also posted on Reddit. I'll leave a link down in the description so you can kind of follow along with us and go ahead and get into it. So before I get into this article, I just want to say the G36 is still one of the best assault rifles in the game, and the information in this article has been confirmed by myself, SkillUp, and several other people who play the Division and report on it. So it is true, there have been nerfs that we weren't told about. So I am going to be reporting on these issues through this article. I also do not fully agree or fully endorse all of the ideas and statements made in this article. I will let you know in line what I think as we go into it. With that said, let's get into this article. Now, Mic Cullen writes at the very beginning, "I'm only writing this because I love the game, despite the frustration that it causes. The reason it will die is very simple. Hashtag because pride." Alright, agents, I don't 100% agree with this first statement. I actually don't agree with the sentiment that the Division will die sooner or later. I believe that it was going to die, but I believe that they've turned it around enough to where it's not going to die. People love this game. It's a great game, and when they have a game that they love, they will support it like they do with the Division. Am I going to go and defend it? No, I'm not going to defend it because there's plenty wrong with it and plenty that needs to be fixed. Is it going in a horribly wrong direction? Yeah. But can Massive turn it around? That is a yes too. And I think we will see some of this as we get later into 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. I believe that Massive can turn it around. And do I think it's because of pride? No. I think that there is some sort of swallowing of pride that has to be done at this point because it's clearly obvious to everybody in the community, and it has to be inside of Ubisoft and Massive that things aren't going very well. And there is definitely a war going on right now between Massive and Ubisoft and the community. Let's go ahead and continue on with this article, and we'll try and stop minimally to discuss these things, but because I want to get through it and it's going to be long if I don't. It's entirely obvious that the devs have exactly zero idea on how to balance the PvP aspect of the game, the Dark Zone, with PvE part everything else. But they have determined that the DZ is how you will play the game. If you want to gear up, which is kind of the point, which would be fine if they had even the vaguest clue as to how to make it work. The last few months have shown that they have their ambitions and their abilities totally confused. Being partly right here, I have some disagreements. Yes, Massive does want you to do the Dark Zone, but the Underground is a viable alternative. Now, if this article was written a few months ago, 100% agree with it. But with the Underground now a viable alternative to loot, there's no reason to play the Dark Zone. They have created an alternate path for players to go in and do something else. The issue here that I find is the availability of all levels of gear and weapons without the increased difficulty in the Dark Zone. I'm sure Massive feels rogues are the increased difficulty and extracting your weapons is the increased difficulty, but I personally feel that it's too easy to go into the Dark Zone and extract high-end 269 gear, or 240 a month ago, if you are already geared. Personally, the Dark Zone should have a cap at 240, but 268 gear should only be available at the same level where it is in the game, which is heroics. 268 gear should only drop from DZ5 and DZ6. It makes it too easy to just sit and farm DZ1 and 2 while killing other players for the loot that they've worked for, increasing the ease at which people who are already overgeared can obtain loot. I was given my ideas, and I thought that this, so there's no reason to pull out my belt and just keep beating this horse. There's just no reason. We all understand what the issue is here. I think it's too easy to obtain loot, and everybody else does as well. We need some sort of cap on the Dark Zone. It needs to be reined in like it was at the very beginning, where it was super hard to get loot. It was super hard to do anything in there. The Dark Zone needs to increase in difficulty if rogues are going to be a factor. We need some sort of enemy AI that says, oh, there's a rogue, we need to kill that before we kill anything else. That is the key. So you should have enemy players and regular players fighting rogues. There should be a serious detriment to the player for going rogue. And right now, there's no consequences for going rogue. There's zero. A little timer, increased loss of XP. If you're 99, you don't care about this stuff. There's no consequences in that. So let's move on. The DZ is broken. Fundamentally, irrevocably broken. I don't believe it is possible to balance the needs of a third-rate PvP environment with a first-rate PvE environment, and so far, the Division is proving me oh so right. But they keep trying. Basically, every change they have made to try to save the DZ has made the PvE, i.e. most of the game, worse. But that doesn't matter. DZ, yes, the unemployed little kitties and glitchers with ridiculous gear love the DZ because unlike good PvP games, it's somewhere that rewards sheer gear levels rather than abilities. Now, hold on there, Professor. I disagree. Yes, PvP is broken. I believe there is a possibility to fix it and make it come in line with the PvE stuff. Easily done by removing 268 and other top loot drops from the DZ. If you want to balance the Dark Zone, make it so nothing over 240 drops in there. Removing 50% of the reason to go in there is going to be part of the resolution. This will allow it to be a true PvP zone and not a farming area. Let the actual content that adds value to the game be the main source of content, not the part of the game that helps drive players away. And the PvP content right now is driving the majority of players away because people found the Dark Zone fun. It's not fun anymore though. Now there's consequences to regular players for going into the DZ and zero consequences to going rogue. If you have higher gear and you're able to dish out a lot of damage and have a lot of toughness, you have no fear. Like you're gonna, especially if you're in a group of 4 and one person's in a group of 1. Now you will all say that this is a group game and you shouldn't be doing it solo, but games are made to be played solo and in a group. There shouldn't be a dividing line. Maybe make a DZ that doesn't have a group aspect to it. Make it only so that people who are solo are in there, and make it so you can't talk to other players, so you can't team up with people. You don't want people teaming up in there. You want a solo experience, then do a solo experience with less loot or something like that to the effect. So, and then there's also the fact that the unemployed kitties and the glitchers with ridiculous gear love the DZ. No, that's not true. There are people out there, yes, the unemployed people, but there's also people who are employed, like myself, who go in there. We do this every day. We go in and get gear and do that. There's nobody in the game right now that can say that they are unemployed or they've played it too much or anything like that. The game's been out a while. Everybody who has put the time into the game is pretty evenly geared across the board. It's really just spending the time combing through YouTube channels, looking at gear builds, looking at what works best in PvP, what works PvE. The reason I get handed to my ass to me in PvP is because I go in there with my PvE set, because I don't like swapping out gear and trying to figure out where the hell I put everything. There needs to be a gear set that we can push a button, it automatically assigns the gear sets and stuff like that. That's just the way it is. There needs to be something there. So I just want it to be that, there's a lot of really cool features that could be added to this game that aren't in there. Just give up on the DZ. Make it PvE like the rest of the game, and your problems are immediately cut down to a fraction of the current number. I have no issue with this. Removing PvP from the game would actually bring players back and remove a lot of the toxic people from the game and from the community, and have them move on to other areas where they would only be toxic to their own kind. People, little assholes find little assholes everywhere. There's going to be people in the game that are that way no matter what. And what it is they're going to go into these other PvE areas and find that, being an asshole there isn't going to get them as far as it will in the DZ. So that's just the way it is. That's the way life is, that, it's just moving on. And Massive is either too stupid to get a communication professional on board, or they're too proud to admit they need one. This entire history of this game is built on promising one thing and delivering on another, and eventually having to admit that they lied. I agree with everything here except for the fact that they admit they lied. They won't admit they lied, but anyone who has watched the E3 2013 video can see the promises and the lies. The game being played in the video is not the same game fundamentally and visually. The last time a game did this, the community was outraged. There were lawsuits, all of that stuff. Of course, I'm talking about Alien Colonial Marines. They showed a great game at E3 and then put out a turd to people. They dumbed down all the graphics, all the textures, all the lighting, everything that made the game look great, they took out. Sure, this game is far and away better than that, but the principle is there. Massive and Ubisoft try and sneak things in without telling us, and you'll see in just a minute. And as I've told you, I stand by my stealth loot nerf table from 2 weeks ago. They tried to sneak in a stealth loot nerf. I figured it out. I looked at it. There are probably other people who saw this as well, but that's just what it is. They nerfed the loot table a couple weeks ago, but they're not ever going to tell us because there's no way for us to prove it. Their communications are embarrassing. Horrendously low quality, even down to something as simple as good sound on the SOTG broadcast, which is state of the game. Yes, I'm a communications professional. No, I'm not writing this in hopes of getting a job. Anyone who thinks this clearly has not read what I've written here. Example from last night's patch, and this is one of many. I could go on for any number of examples. RE, the G36 nerf. What they said they would do, reduce the base damage of all G36 assault rifles. Estimates were 5 to 7%. Actually, that's wrong. It was 15%. They were upfront about it. They did not say 5 to 7%. They have been testing this. I heard many different tests come back from friends inside Ubisoft that it was 10%, 15%. There was even a rumor that it was 30%. There were lots of testing done just to see how well it could get done. So I feel like this next part is probably where they got the round balance from, is because they wanted to do 30% and they actually went to this instead as a compromise. So what they actually did, reduce the base damage of all G36 assault rifles by 15%, reduce the range by about 5%, increase the recoil, base recoil, and per bullet, change the recoil pattern, i.e. they made massive changes to this weapon. So myself and many others have confirmed that this is true. Looking at the data mined information and the before and after videos that we all have of the stats and how it handles, why would they do this without telling us what they did? Honestly, they did it because the weapon was too good. Go watch my last video for alternatives to the G36 if you find it unusable. I still think it's a pretty good weapon, but there are definitely some little quirks that they added in. So in fact, while the LVOA has worse damage, the stability and accuracy is actually better now. The fact remains, though, that they tried to hide something. They obviously haven't learned yet that the community will continue to teach Massive what we can do. We are a community and will continue to be united. If you change something, we will find it and you will be exposed. Transparency is your best weapon against your own stupidity, and ignorance isn't an excuse. The last time something happened where there was a stealth nerf and Marco Styles called you out on it, you went, oh, it was supposed to be in the patch notes, but it wasn't. BS. You got caught and that was your excuse for not doing it. So I would advise you to do this in the future. If there's an important change, put it in the patch notes, because we will find it and we will call you out on it. To expect that people who actually play the game, i.e. not devs, would not notice this change to the most loved gun in the game is moronic. Yet they never mentioned their actual changes. They were data mined, but we all knew the gun was far different to earlier in the day, not just nerfed in terms of its stopping power. Now we hear that supposedly the community managers weren't told of these changes. Have I mentioned that need for communication professional? Well, maybe any kind of management professional would be a good start. I'm not calling for anyone's job, but if you saw my responses and comments to a recent post by a community manager who will remain nameless, it's apparent that no one is vetting these posts. Natchai is great because he is actually attempting to communicate, but the information needs to be factual, solid, and useful. Here's a great example. After my last video, I went to investigate the facts of the 1.4 release date because I had thought to myself that I saw it somewhere and saw it reported. I reported they didn't know what the release date was, and they said that in the State of the Game, when in fact it was reported last month by Windows Report and picked up by Christian Today and Gamer Rant and several other places in the most recent State of the Game that they had no release date. This means that they either didn't have the information or they just lied to us at E3 when they said it was going to be September. All of these news sites said it will be released in September. That's when they said it would be released. Either way, someone dropped the ball, and communication once again has been deemed false from the inside. If you're giving a State of the Game and you say there's no release date, say there's no release date for an exact date. Say we're aiming at November or we're aiming at September, which is what it's currently aimed at, is September. But they're saying there's no release date, which means they either went back on it or they're just ignorant and they weren't told. And I know a lot of my friends inside weren't told. And that's really what it is. So, yet they do this time and time after time. Their lack of strategy and communication is only rivaled by their lack of strategy in the way they are building it out. It's a PR communication case study waiting to happen. I'm only writing this because I am frustrated. There are so many things about this game that I love, but Massive just destroys them in a systematic way in order to try and make the DZ work, which is something that they've demonstrated comprehensively that they have no idea how to do. Yes, communication is sorely lacking, but also PR is lacking, QA is lacking, design ideas lacking. I can go on. There are no shortage of things that are lacking in this game. What the game lacks is creative fixes. There is too much focus on creating new content and not enough focus on fixing the current content. The bigger problem facing this game is that the PvP is broken in both offense and defense. The game is poorly balanced versus NPCs. There's problems with loot acquisition. There's communication to the community, and finally scavenging. Yes, I said scavenging. I always will say scavenging because that is the part of the game that I get, because it's so lacking. There's just nothing for scavenging there, and they keep saying there is, which is part of the poorly communication stuff, because I am not a fan of just criticizing things without giving some suggestions on making it better. Here are a few things that I can suggest that will help turn this game around based on what I've read in this article. Let's talk PvP. Make a competitive mission pitting team against team to figure out how to get to the end faster. That's really simple. A co-op PvP mode, not a kill 'em PvP mode, would work in this game. It works great. People who win get the higher loot. People that don't either don't get any loot or they get lesser loot. People are going to enjoy that. People enjoy a competitive race. So next, player versus NPC, reduce enemy difficulty and start adding in mechanics to make it difficult. You have a few types of enemies: lightning bolt enemies who rush blindly, grenaders and infantry, heavy, healers, snipers, and tech, and then regular agents, or shade agents as you call them. Why not actually make squads of enemies who do more than just aimbot players? They already try and flank, which is one great strat. Why not have them perform more advanced combats, like moving in behind shielded enemies as they push forward? How about shotgunners waiting to ambush enemies instead of running straight on? There are a ton of ways. Feel free to contact me. My email address is in the name of the channel, plus at gmail.com. Contact me. I'm happy to do a full design outlay for how you can make this better. Go back and watch my videos. Each one has suggestions in it as well. Now, communication to the community. Do I need to even help with this? Sure. There are probably people in there that can actually do a better job than I am. Providing accurate notes on all changes, not just stealth changes. You will find less people mad up front at the changes than the fact that you tried to hide them. And you won't have to look foolish when you have to say that it was an oversight in quotation marks. Like, there's no oversight. You either told us about something or you didn't. Whoever wrote the actual communication needs to be fired if that's what they're doing. If they're forgetting stuff that needs to go in, then they need to be fired because they're not doing their job and they're making the rest of the company look bad. Maybe I'm not calling for somebody's job, but I'm calling for this person's job. If the producer who is writing up, and I know that producers often write up, either creative directors or producers, whoever's writing up these patch notes, they need to be fired because they have no idea what's going on with the game, and they need to either be more in tune with the game, they need to get additional training, something to the fact that they need to do that. But moving on, loot acquisition. I think removing the top loot from the DZ would help reduce the people playing and complaining. Although it's not my final solution or my only one, I know that there are people who would be against removing 268 gear pieces from the DZ, but you know what? If it's going to help remove the a-holes from the DZ, and bring some people back and help with the problem of PvP, that's really what needs to be done. That's just what it is. Just go, once again, contact me. I will help you. I will help you figure this out. I am happy to write up a full write-up on how to help design a better PvP, better PvE, better scavenging, whatever it is. I will help you write this up. I have a background in production of video games. I have a background in designing video games. I've written scripts for video games. I've done all this stuff. If you need help, reach out to me. I'm happy to give it to you. And if it's something that I'm going to enjoy, I'll do it for free. Just, that's it. That's my offer to you. I will help you do it for free. Now, finally, we have come to the last thing I mentioned, which is scavenging. Yeah, video incoming before the end of the week is over on the topic. Like I said in my last video, I will make one of these every week until this is fixed. Make scavenging an actual useful stat. That's my suggestion. If you can't change it, make it so it has a chance to drop high-end loot from any enemy that's out on the street, and even lower percentage to drop mint green pieces of gear. Here, Let's say you have a minimum and a maximum to scavenging. Now, if you go to the maximum and you look at the percentages, you can adjust the percentages, but let's say for the maximum scavenging skill, give it a 0.5% chance to drop a mint and a 1% chance to drop a yellow high-end from a regular mob. That's 1 yellow out of every 100 kills, not a bad perk for maxing out scavenging, and 1 green per 200. That's nothing, but people would put a lot in scavenging if they knew that this is how it works. Let me tell you, you'll add a significant amount of replayability if there was the slightest chance with a large number of scavenging to get mint or yellow high-end pieces. Now, I'm not saying drop these off at level 30, but maybe a level 33 or 34 in the underground, heroic missions, and Dark Zone. Just think about that. People would actually play the content. The Nomad gear set wouldn't be a waste, and people, even though they have the slightest chance, it would be a small chance, will wear the gear because it had a chance. You could even break it down by gear score. 0.5% for a 191 mint, 0.4% for a 214, 0.3% for a 229 weapon and gear, 0.2% for a 240 gear, and 0.1% for 268. There you go. You don't even need to pay me for that. That's free. You got to figure this stuff out. People are really grasping at straws here on why they need to continue playing your game, and this could help them. Change scavenging. If you can't change it so that scavenging works with bosses, with drops, with boxes, with anything else, this is the way to do it. Make it so there's a small, minuscule percentage chance of, instead of being a superior item, it is a high-end, it is a mint, somewhere around there. People will just go through the stuff and kill stuff. If they have a chance out of, right now the Showstopper is a great example. People are running through the Lexington Heroic for a chance to get this, and they've done it 50, 100 times for this one piece of gear that's not even that great. Like, imagine if you had scavenging and you had a chance at getting a mint green piece of gear or a 229 weapon out of a regular drop from these. People would go through and do them over and over again. Like this. It would give you content outside of PvP, and the chance would be minuscule, but it would be worth it because one person who does 300 runs would finally get one piece of gear. It would be an amazing time. People would celebrate. People would be like, that's amazing. I remember when that stuff used to happen in the Dark Zone back in 1.1, when you would kill an enemy and a high-end weapon or high-end piece of gear would drop. We would that was amazing. It was so rare to see those that we would chase people down for them. We'd kill people for them. It was amazing because they were so rare, and now that everything's just there, people are just kind of I'll kill you for it. Doesn't matter. Anyway, that's been my time. Hopefully you found this informationally useful and at least very entertaining. I know that there are a lot of you really upset right now with the way things are heading. Stick with it. Play a few other games. Take a time out. There are always things to do, and the game will be here when you get back. If you did find this informational, interesting, or helpful in any way, leave a like on this video and subscribe for more daily Division content. Until then, for all of us here at the Division Let's Talk, I am Mic Cullen, and we'll see you in the underground. Agent out.